Hello, I'm Heather Huston Barkley, Associate Chair at the Philanthropy Institute at Cleveland Clinic. Today I'm talking with a Cleveland Clinic researcher who has some really exciting projects underway in cancer research. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and today's guest is Dr. Charis Eng. Dr. Eng has many titles: Chair and Founding Director of the Genomic Medicine Institute of the Cleveland Clinic, Founding Director and attending clinical cancer geneticist of the Institute's clinical component, the Center for Personalized Genetic Healthcare, and Professor and Vice Chairman of the Department of Genetics at Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine, to name a few. Dr. Eng is best known for her achievements and leadership in genetics, genomics-based research, and personalized healthcare. She has published more than 400 peer-reviewed original papers and has received numerous awards for her research. Welcome, Dr. Eng.
Thank you, Heather. I'm delighted to be here, and it's an honor to speak during Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Exactly. October is, of course, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and while many of us know about the devastating impact that breast cancer has on individuals and families, many of us don't know how the disease develops. Your research takes the cancer all the way down to its most microscopic form. Tell us about how that works.
Breast cancer is a genetic disease. What does that mean? So let's step back. I usually tell my patients that we human beings, we work very well, in fact. And we work very well because we have 30,000 genes orchestrating our body when to heal itself after it's been cut, but when to stop the cells growing when it touches. Cancer comes from the fact that when the cells touch each other, they don't know when to stop. So they grow uncontrollably, and that's a cancer. And breast cancer is no different. So the 30,000 genes are like 30,000 encyclopedias, and all of them have to read correctly. If there's a fatal typographical error in one of them, that is called a mutation in a gene. And it's the accumulating of these genetic mutations that makes a breast cancer. And that's why I call it a genetic disease. And breast cancers, the risk is inherited, not the cancer. So that's important. And it can be passed down to your children, males and females.
Well, as a geneticist, you study how family history plays a role in disease. What do we know about how genetics plays a role in breast cancer? Are there telltale family history red flags that we should be on the lookout for?
Yes, so when someone has an inherited gene mutation, the ones that you can pass on in a 50-50 fashion, there are red flags, clinical red flags, as we say. And breast cancer, for example, occurs at an average of between 55 and 65 years old. And genetic breast cancer makes a breast cancer occur much younger, even in the 20s, 30s, 40s. And so young age of getting a breast cancer is a big red flag. We often speak about it as breast cancer, one disease. It's not, it's multiple diseases. There is a type of breast cancer, a particularly aggressive type called triple negative breast cancer. That's a red flag for people who have inherited a gene mutation in BRCA1 or BRCA2. Then familial clustering. This is why physicians must take a good family history, and you should always insist on that. And when you see clustering of breast cancers or breast and ovarian cancers, what I call guilt by association, breast and thyroid cancers, it should be a ding, 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 let me refer my patient to the nice geneticist or genetic counselor.
Tell us about what you and your team are working on now. What looks promising, and what are you most excited about?
I work on a gene called PTEN. PTEN is a cancer-fighting gene, and that's why it's important. When it works well, it tries to hold cancers at bay. So you can imagine that if that PTEN encyclopedia had a bad typographical error, a PTEN mutation, it predisposes men and women to a very high risk of cancer, and 85% risk of female breast cancer, for example, compared to 13% in the population. 35% lifetime risk of thyroid cancer compared to 1% in the population. I discovered this gene in 1997. It took between 1 and 2 decades worth of research, and thanks to all our patients and families who participated, for us to figure out what I just told you. What are the individual risks of the different cancers, and when does it start? And the cancers in inherited disease usually start younger. But because of our research, we are able to bring this knowledge to the clinic and to begin clinical screening earlier and at a more routine interval. In this manner, we can catch the cancers early when they are eminently curable. So we are working on multi-dimensional approaches to see if we can bring back that sort of group, cohort, population health studies down to an individual. We're looking whether regional variations in our other genes actually crosstalk to the mutation in PTEN, or rather PTEN mutation talks to some of the other genetic variations. And can putting the two together show us the way that, yes, you are the one that will have that risk of breast cancer, but you will not. PTEN is also one of the most common autism genes. And I cannot tell which of the ones with PTEN mutations will develop autism or cancer or both. So we're working very, very hard.
What is it your goal or your big moonshot when it comes specifically to PTEN?
I would really like to be able to predict which single individual will develop which cancer specifically, because in autism, the earlier you can make the diagnosis, the better the likelihood of alleviating symptoms or even curing it, so to speak. The other one is PTEN mutations are said to be non-druggable. And so I am trying to find a way to drug the undruggable. Now that is a moonshot. The second is we are studying the breast microbiome. A microbiome describes the collection or community of everything microscopic, or I should say everything that's living, that is non-human, that is in or on our bodies. And it turns out that they and us get along very well. In fact, with everybody's research around the world, we in fact need our microbes to keep the skin healthy, to keep our guts healthy. Your gut microbiome actually talks to your brain and to the breast and so on. So we have actually found a difference in the breast microbiome between people who have cancer versus the breasts of those who do not. So we are hoping to be able to rebalance the microbiome in breast cancer, maybe as a therapeutic adjunct.
What are you learning about how this can translate into treatments down the road?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is to correlate, to say what exactly makes a healthy microbiome mix and what makes for an unhealthy one. I have a funny feeling that different people may have different microbiomes. And so in a way, this is sort of precision or personalized microbiome medicine. Do we check someone's microbiome and then we formulate a specific microbiome for that person that will be different from the next person? I think so. We also are learning how the microbiome can interact with our immune system, because when you talk about bugs and bacteria, it must interact with the immune system. We have a Gray Foundation grant that is seeking to examine how the bacteria talk to our body's immune system. And so that is, again, another pathway that we can target.
How does your team work across Cleveland Clinic enterprise, and what does that mean for patients?
As geneticists, we touch every single disease. And so right now we have 12 primary staff members with many secondary joint appointees, of whom we're also very proud. And each of us, or groups of us, have our specialty really to focus on. Breast cancer research can actually help other diseases. Doing research on other diseases can help breast cancer. To put the two together, it will bring faster cures. This is one of the themes of my department, the Genomic Medicine Institute. I try to hire and recruit the best who are studying either one gene or one system of genes or things that can predispose to 2 or more diseases.
Dr. Eng, philanthropy has made a significant impact on your research. Please share some highlights as to how generous donors have helped advance breast cancer research.
Philanthropy is vital, especially for cutting-edge discoveries, because in traditional mechanisms for funding, they are asking for so much preliminary work that these cutting-edge ideas always seem, we're off the rocker, the woman's crazy, but philanthropy does not judge that way. They judge on, is this great science? Yeah, it's a crazy idea, but crazy ideas lead to fantastic discoveries. So the discovery of PTEN, the cancer-fighting gene predisposing to autism, certainly is a beneficiary. All my breast microbiome work was born out of philanthropy and the Vilosano pilot program. We would not have gotten this Gray Foundation grant, which is substantial, without funding from the Vilosano in the first place.
What funding is needed now, and how will that continue to transform breast cancer diagnosis and care?
I think the two areas that any breast cancer researcher want to see funded are pilot funding, such as the Vilosano pilot program, and funding that would cross no man's land. And what does that mean? Good research often takes basic science to a certain level, and it's a very high level. But the quality of science required to go over to clinical care is much, much higher. So here we have this gap, and often research funding stops at this level, and there's nothing that fills this space of translational research, because you're translating basic science to clinical care. We are trying to start a clinical trial with Drs. Grootmeyer in Abu Dhabi and Drs. Al-Hili here to give a probiotic that is formulated with the healthy bacteria and fungi to women with early stage breast cancer, and to see whether the probiotic actually changes the microbiome in the gut, and it almost certainly will, and maybe even in the breast. But we're having a little trouble getting it funded, because you can imagine that a traditional funding agency will merely laugh at this cutting edge idea. And here again, I think philanthropy is key.
It's almost as though you need seed funding to take these great ideas from great ideas into a very solid research program that can then be leveraged for significant grant dollars.
Precisely. And, for the business-minded, this is a dramatic return on investment. For example, the Vilosano grant is typically $100,000. From that, we have a $1.6 million foundation grant. As one of my colleagues said, it's better than any shares you can buy.
All of our Vilosano participants would be elated to hear the impact of Vilosano on your work and breast cancer overall. Thank you, Dr. Eng. We wish you the best in your research, and we're grateful that you took the time to give us an inside look at your current research taking place at Cleveland Clinic.
Thank you. It's a privilege to work here.